Hello there everyone, and welcome to another edition of Lydia's Crafty Corner with me, Lydia, in my little crafty corner. So today we are going to be using the really cool colouring book from Altenew. So this is the Exotic Blooms and this is the watercolouring book. And in here we have many different images, and I'm going to go with one of the images that have the grey scale. So they both have the black and the white scale. But I am going to go with the grey outline so I can have a no-line watercolour look. For my watercolours, I am using the 24 pan from Altenew, so this is the Artist Watercolour. And what I've done is I've taken some of the very pretty cherry blossom of paint from the tin, and I've just added that onto a palette, which is in fact just a normal stamping block. Now to start with, all I'm going to do is I'm going to add some clean clear water. I know it's not that clean or clear because I did have a little bit of pink on my brush, but onto the petal that I wish to colour. So I'm making sure that I have water all over this petal. I can then take the pigment from my little palette that I have just above me, and I'm just going to dab that in to where I think it's going to be the darkest. So that's going to be where the petals overlap each other and also the base of the petal. And you can see that I'm just dabbing that colour in. Once I've done that, I can then take a little bit of more water just to kind of pull that colour out as well. So once I've finished the first petal, I'm just going to do the other petals in exactly the same way. Now, as you can see, I am doing petals that do not touch each other. So when they're all wet, make sure that you don't add in another petal next to it. Otherwise, the petals kind of will just run into each other. So you want to make sure that the petals are nice and dry before you start working next to a petal again. So again, I'm just going to be doing the same technique. So that's adding that clean clear water down, or maybe just a little bit of clean clear water that has a touch of pink like mine, and then adding in that darker pigment just to the base of those petals or where the petals overlap each other. And that is going to give you the look of the shadow. Because we have that water down on the petal, most of the blending is going to be done by that water. You don't really need to worry about it. The water is just going to kind of pull that pigment out and give you more of a gradient effect further down the petal just by you doing nothing. So you're just adding that water down first, dabbing in that pigment colour, and then letting the water do the rest for you. As you can see, this kind of watercolour does take a little bit of time, but it is truly, truly, truly relaxing. And I just love to see how those blooms kind of come to life the more of the petals colour in. So I'm just going to keep going with this until I've completed all of my petals. The smaller the petal, I do find the hardest to kind of work out how much pigment is going to be needed on the petal. You can actually take some of that pigment away. So if you kind of make your brush nice and dry, you can pull away some of the pigment from your paper and then get rid of a little bit of darkness that way as well. So we are now coming to the kind of finishing line with the flowers. So I'm just going to add in those really small kind of pieces to this flower that we have left here. Again, just making sure that everything is nice and dry before I do work in a petal next to it, because I don't want to get to this point and then have my petals run together. So once my flowers are done, I'm then going to move on to the leaves. I'm using a mix of the Tropical Forest watercolour with a tiny, tiny bit of the Delectable Delights just to add in some extra shading to this. All I'm going to do is I'm going to go over with some clean clear water. As you can see, my clean clear water is a little bit green at this point, but I'm not going to worry because it is just going to add a little bit of more darkness to this one. So I'm just going to go over the whole entire leaf that I want to be green. Obviously, I am just adding the clean clear water down. I'm then going to take that dark green, the Tropical Forest colour, add that in at the base of the leaf. So this is where I want it to be the darkest. I'm just kind of dabbing that colour in and kind of tracing around the outside edge of that flower that we have there. As I said, I am going to pull this out a little bit more with some water just to add that kind of gradient effect there. The water is actually going to do most of this work. And then when I got to this point, I then decided that I did want to add in some of that brown from the Delectable Delights. So I'm just going to add a little bit of that in too. So once I have done that leaf, I'm just going to do the other leaves in exactly the same way. So I'm going to add that clean, clear water down first, then take my pigment from the watercolor pan that I have on my little palette up to the top of me, and then pull that out a little bit with the water if it needs it. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. So I then decided to make these images pop a little bit more, that I wanted to add a black background to this. So all I'm doing is I'm taking the rock collection and I'm adding a tiny bit of water to this, and then just painting my whole entire background with it. I also painted over a few of the leaf outlines that I didn't want on my image, so you can kind of disguise those too. I then wanted to add a little bit more added detail and shading to these. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my colouring pencils from Altenew and I'm just going to add some simple shading to the flowers and also the leaves. So I'm going to kind of use the Rubelite for the flowers, and then for the leaves I'm just going to be using that moss just to add some darker shading to the base of those. I'm then going to take one of the cover dies from Altenew. Now this is the Abstract Landscape cover die, but I only want the outside frame of this. So I'm just going to go in and trim off all of the little pieces on the inside so I can just have this really nice thin frame. So I cut that out of some jet black cardstock. Once I've done that, I'm going to add some super sticky tape to the back of the little frame that we've just created here. I do find that super sticky tape works best when you're using acetate, so that's why I am using this. So I'm just going to add that to all of the sides. I'm then going to take a piece of acetate and I'm going to place this onto that little piece that we have. So this is going to create our little shaker window. So I'm just having a little piece of acetate that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. If you need to trim off anything, just go ahead and trim. I'm then going to use some of the foam tape from Altenew. Now this is kind of the thing that you really need to do with a shaker card. You really need to make sure that all of this foam tape touches each other. So that means that nothing is going to be able to escape your little shaker element. So once I've done that, I can then add my background to my card base. This is a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 card base, and I've just popped that into position. I'm then going to take the Happy Birthday die from Altenew. I have some of the gold glitter cardstock onto some double-sided adhesive, and I'm just going to run that through my die cutting machine to create this very pretty and sparkly sentiment. I just think it looks so pretty. It is a tad delicate, so you may need a little pin or some tweezers just to help you remove all of the little pieces from that. I'm then going to add this into place onto my shaker window. So I'm just popping that into place and then pressing that down. Once we're at this point, I can then add my little shaker elements into my card. So I'm using a mix of the metallic and also the satin gold sequins from Altenew. Popping those into place, I can then remove all of the little foam backing and then pop my frame into position, just making sure that I have it nicely lined up around the edge of the card. So you can see just how pretty this is when it does shake. So here is the card complete. I really do hope that you like the card and that you've enjoyed the video as well. If you do create a card that was inspired by this, it'd be great if you do share, because we'd love to see. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again really soon. Bye-bye.
Tips, techniques and tutorials just like this by subscribing to the Altenew YouTube channel. All you need to do is click on that little bell up there and you will never miss a video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.